We're live, man.
We are live. There we go. All right, so we've got our video. I don't know if we have the chat window up yet, though, or if we're going to get a chat window. We may have to have Josh assist us from out there.
Cool.
Hi, everybody. It's August, and that means it's time for another AMA session. I'm in the RentPrep offices today. I'm Andrew Schultz. I'm the community manager here at RentPrep. I'm also a real estate broker here in the state of New York with about 13 years of experience. I've got Carlos with me. Carlos is the business development manager here at RentPrep.
That's right.
We're going to be answering a bunch of questions from you guys. We had a form that was submitted or posted a few days ago where you could submit questions for the AMA. We're also going to try to grab some questions out of the group through the chat as they're coming through live. So if you have a question live, feel free to ask it. We will try to get a few of those in as well, but we do have a few questions that we've already pre-selected based on what you guys had submitted. We're doing these about once a month. Last month was just me. This month it's myself and Carlos. Typically, I think it's you and Steve that do these, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I took a little bit of a break.
Yeah, and then last month I know you guys were both pretty busy, but we're glad to have you back this month.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
So, how do you want to do this? Do you want to jump right into questions?
Yeah, I say we just kind of get into it. If Josh, if we can work on getting the live questions up there, that'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, let's jump right into it. I got a question here from Sherry. Sherry asked if the tenant pays early, like 1 or 2 days, should she hold on to the check or deposit it immediately? She's not quite sure when exactly to do that.
So the question was, if the tenant pays their rent early, when
Right.
should you basically cash that check?
Yep.
So if the tenant wrote you a check and the check is like, what's today's date? The 20-something?
Third.
23rd. So if you wrote me a rent check and it's for the 23rd, I'm depositing it on the 23rd. It doesn't matter to me if the rent's not due until the 1st of the month.
Right.
Whatever the case may be.
So the date on the check.
The date on the check, right.
That's the date you deposit.
Right, exactly.
Perfect.
If a tenant gives you a check, like say the tenant gives you the check today on August 23rd.
Yeah.
And actually, I need to scoot over a little bit so I'm actually in frame.
Yeah, come right in.
Let's get cozy. It'll be fun.
All right. You want me to, I can
No,
go,
we're good.
Sure, like a bike?
What's that?
What, I can jump on like a bike?
Tandem style?
Yeah.
So if a tenant hands you a rent check on the 23rd of August and it says September 1st, that's actually a promissory note.
Okay.
And doesn't become a valid check until September 1st.
Gotcha.
Other than that, it's just a signed promissory note from the tenant. I intend to pay you X dollars on September 1st.
Perfect. I love it. Nice and simple.
Mm-hmm.
Elena wanted to know, is it illegal to do a surprise check on a rental? And this is why.
Okay.
She has a tenant she suspects is hiding a pet. And I guess she knows the previous landlord. The previous landlord had called her to let her know that they were hiding, I guess, a bunny and a dog. And she didn't find this out until they moved out.
Mm-hmm.
And the tenant stated that she didn't have any pets when she applied. So, they don't have a pet addendum in the contract because, the applicant didn't say at the time that they had any pets.
Sure.
Want to know what you recommend and how to proceed with something like this.
So I think the first thing you have to do is actually find out whether a pet exists in the scenario or not.
How do you do that? Do you at night you look in the windows?
Honestly, that's exactly what I was going to say.
No way.
I'm dead serious. Not at night necessarily. I'm not going to be creeping around staring through windows. But,
Right.
I mean, look, you're going to see a cat in a window. If they have a cat, you're going to eventually see a cat in a window.
Yeah.
If there's a dog, you're going to find dog waste in the yard more than likely. You're going to
that
hear the
makes
dog
sense.
barking when you approach the
Right,
house,
right.
whatever the case may be. So, everybody and their brother carries a cell phone with them. It's not hard to, point a camera at the front of the house, say I'm at 123 Main Street,
Right.
leave your recording on so that it's uninterrupted, and then go, walk around the house. And if you hear a dog barking right outside that tenant's door,
Right.
pretty clear indicator that there's some kind of an animal living there.
With something like that, if it's that blatant,
Mhm.
would you walk up to the door at that point, knock, say, "Hey guys, I was in the neighborhood. I figured I'd stop by. Do you guys need anything?"
No, probably not.
No, I
Because
didn't go that route.
there's no benefit to doing that. Like the
Right.
direct confrontation in that instance is probably just going to result in some anger and some hurt feelings.
Okay.
At that point, I would send whatever proof I have to the actual tenant, like via mail or
Okay.
email or whatever the case may be.
All right.
If I have pictures of the animal in the window, I'm going to send them that. And then what I do is I include a copy of their lease and I highlight the section of the lease that they're in
Gotcha.
violation of.
Would you typically give that applicant or that tenant an opportunity to get rid of the animals, or at that point you're just saying you're in breach of your lease, you're going to be served?
So
30-day notice?
more than likely, they're going to have to get rid of the animals.
So you'll give them a shot, though.
Right,
So,
yeah.
You got X amount of days to get rid of the animals.
Mhm.
Anything beyond that.
So you do have to give a notice to cure. You have to give in New York State. There's a time frame that you have to give to remedy any sort of a situation such as that.
Sure.
So you would give them that amount of time, and then if the animal is still there,
Yeah.
at that point I would probably start looking toward an eviction. All of our units are no pet units. We don't do pets in any of our buildings. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, Elena, I hope that answers your question. I hope it helped out.
Mm-hmm.
Question from Liz. Liz says, if you end up replacing a carpet because it was damaged by the tenant, how do you determine the amount of their security deposit? The carpet was 1 year old when they moved in. It was Berber with a 20-year lifetime guarantee. They were there for 7 years. So they were there for 7 years. Apparently this person replaced the carpet with, and then they only lived there a year, but they destroyed the carpet.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, obviously take pictures of the damage of what you had to replace, and at that point, what you replaced it with, keep all your documentation and say, listen, it costs X amount of dollars to replace.
Mm-hmm.
This is coming out of your deposit. Would you agree?
I would somewhat agree, yeah. There's actually a really good article on the RentPrep website about this. I was reading it. I went to look because I wanted to, I know we've talked about it several times, and I wanted to see what we had said about it in the past.
Sure.
And what we typically recommend is, read this again? It was, the carpet was 7 years old, and these tenants lived there for...
The tenants lived there for the last 7 years.
Okay.
And it looks like on year 6, she replaced the carpet because the carpet was only 1 year old.
Okay, so the carpet was only 1 year old.
1 year old.
So,
Yeah.
carpet...
I think she's kind of teeter-tottering because they were there for so long. It's like, man, do I want to do this?
But it's brand new carpet,
But
too.
it's brand new carpet.
And that's one of those situations where, so I don't know if I've talked about this, but I kind of run my business off of what's legal, then what's the lease say, and then logic.
Gotcha.
And we've reached now down to the logic step where we're talking right now, because we're talking about what makes sense for deduction, because a lot of times that's not specified in law or by lease.
Okay.
So in this instance, for a carpet that's a year old, I'm probably... So we have to talk about depreciation schedules a little bit, I guess. We'll back up a touch.
Okay.
So everything has a useful lifespan inside of a property. Even the property itself. You depreciate a property over, I think it's 27 and a half years on your taxes.
Okay.
Different parts of the property, different components of the property have different useful lifespans. So
Sure.
for instance, cabinets I think is 20 or 25 years. Carpet I think is 5 years.
Gotcha.
And there's a couple different guidelines you can go by. HUD puts one out, the IRS put one out. One of the major contracting associations in the country has put one out. So depending on whose book you're looking at for how long an object should last, that would be your depreciation period.
Gotcha. So if your carpet's got a 5-year depreciation, it was in there a year, that means 20%. So if it was a $100 carpet, you should really only charge $80.
Yeah, exactly. So if it's a $100 carpet, you should start at $80, and then really you're only charging for the portion of the carpet that they destroyed.
Gotcha.
So your $80 may even shrink down from there based on the square footage of carpet that you can save versus the square footage of carpet that's totally destroyed and has to be replaced.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So it's a little bit more of a process for that stuff.
Sure, makes sense. Same. Looks like Liz here again asks, if a tenant causes rips in vinyl flooring and you have no remnant for repair, how do you determine the cost of the damage? It will need to be replaced, but it's older vinyl. Again, depreciation.
Yeah, it's basically the same thing.
Floor.
Yeah. So that's a situation where if she had a remnant, I would charge for the full cost of the repair. So if, like, say you have a, let's use a 12 by 12 stick down tile as an example. Yep. Say you need to replace 4 of those tiles, and you have the tiles on hand because you bought extra when you put the floor down.
Right.
I would pop the tiles off, put the new tiles down, and charge for the labor and materials on that job.
Gotcha.
There's no depreciation on something like that in my mind.
Okay.
If you have to replace an entire floor or something like that, that's something that I would be looking at a depreciation schedule on.
Gotcha. Yeah. Liz, I hope that makes sense to you.
Yeah. Let's see if we can get.
Yeah, I was going to say, did Josh get the? Is he working on that? Do we know?
Let's see here. Well, we have this, but I don't know. This is, I think, the chat window, but I don't think that it refreshes automatically.
Gotcha.
But we'll leave that up. We're definitely still live though, so we're good that way.
Yeah.
I'll leave this up, and then we can just hit refresh if needed.
Okay. So Andrea wants to know, what can I do when the renter loses their job and can't pay rent? What's the best route to protect yourself from this situation? That's kind of a tough one, man. I mean, you can't tell somebody's personal situation all the time, you know?
Well, and so I explain to clients whenever I'm talking to a new client for our property management company, I will explain to them that tenant screening, which you guys do day in, day out every single day, tenant screening is a situation where it's a snapshot in time.
Okay.
So there's nothing that says that the tenant that you screened out that screened perfectly on Friday didn't lose their job over the weekend and then move into your apartment on Monday.
Right.
And I know that as fact because actually I literally had that exact situation play out in my life. I signed the lease on a new apartment on like a Thursday, and on Friday afternoon I was low man on the totem pole at this company and I got cut. So it literally put me in this exact scenario.
Right.
Fortunately, I was in a position where I was able to find new employment quickly, and it didn't turn into a big deal. But going back to the root question here, what do you do when someone loses their job and can't afford to pay rent? If you asked me this question pre-COVID, I probably would have said immediately file for an eviction. Just start that process, get that process rolling, because all you're doing is burning daylight, not starting that process.
Would you start that process prior to them not paying rent, or because
there's really nothing you can do prior to them not, unless they have other lease
Right.
violations. So like as soon as the first rent check is missed,
that's when you go?
that's
for
when
it?
I would start.
Gotcha.
There's a reason to start it that way. Number one, that gives the tenant the ability to go to various assistance agencies and try to get some assistance, which we work with all of them. We work with every assistance agency out there pretty much.
Would you help the tenant with that process?
So we have like a list of resources, especially during COVID, there was a really good list of resources that was available that we were distributing to tenants.
Okay.
But I mean, other than that, beyond just supplying them with whatever paperwork needs or taking care of their paperwork and stuff, that's about as far as we get involved in the process.
What about
Post-COVID
sorry,
though? Post-COVID, my stance has changed on this a little bit.
Okay.
I'm more inclined to tell a tenant, look, if you move out and leave the place clean, and we'll hold your deposit. We're going to keep your deposit because we have to place a new tenant, so it's going to eat the 1 month to place the new tenant. I'm more inclined to just let a tenant walk away from a lease at this point than to hold them when I know that they can't afford it.
Right.
I'm a third-party property manager. I'm always playing with other people's money, essentially. So at the end of the day, I have to balance the needs of the tenant, the needs of the property owner, and myself, my business.
Sure.
The tenant can't afford the apartment, which is a bad situation for them. They need out. The only thing that the owner is, if you leave this if you leave this non-paying tenant in the unit, the owner's at a loss because now they're losing rent money, which they're probably never going to recover. And my office is going through everything, trying to get the eviction or trying to get the tenant to move, whatever the case may be.
Sure.
It's a no-win situation for everybody. Everyone loses money in a situation like that.
Right.
If a tenant approaches me and says, I don't have a job, my first question is going to be, are you able to move out? Because at least that takes that financial stress off their plate immediately.
Okay.
If they can move in with a friend, a family member, whatever, it takes a big burden off of their plate while they figure the rest of it out.
Sure.
So going back to the root of the question, I would say that I would probably still start that eviction process, or at least give them their 3-day notice immediately as soon as they've missed that rent payment, so that they can try to get the assistance thing going. But I'm also more inclined to say, hey, do you want to just walk away from this, and we'll, because especially like if you're in California, it's months to years to get an eviction. In New York State, in our area right now, it's 2 to 3 months minimum. Right. That's several $1,000s of lost rent revenue. Right. I would much rather just let that tenant move without a blemish on their on their credit report, and just everybody moves forward at that point.
Gotcha. What about income verification prior to, obviously moving in? That way you have maybe an understanding of how much money they do have in the bank. So in case of a situation like this, if they do lose their job, like, okay, well, I remember when I ran the report maybe 6 months ago, they had $20,000 in savings. Right. At least I know that they have some type of cushion there. And that's something we offer on the RentPrep site.
Right, exactly,
So if you're looking, if you don't run, reports through the RentPrep site, definitely take a look and look at the income verification.
Well, and going along with what you had said there, if the tenant has a stockpile of capital that they have access to, maybe depending on the state you're in, because you can't do this in New York, you can't do prepaid rent really. But they may want to pay like 6 months of rent up front so that as the landlord, you're paid, you don't have to worry about everything while I'm dealing with what's going on in my life. So
makes sense. Cool.
That might work depending on your state and what the laws are.
Yeah, awesome. Great question. I like that, Andrew. Thank you. Dave wants to know, what do you do when a tenant won't give forwarding address for the security deposit and is uncontactable? Is that a word? Uncontactable?
Uncontactable? Unreachable?
Unreachable.
That's probably...
Uncontactable? Yeah, that's...
I was actually thinking about this. I read this question this morning before we came in, and I was thinking about this one. There's a few options you have. RentPrep doesn't offer any sort of skip tracing services or anything, no?
No, nothing like that.
I was going to say, like, skip tracing would be probably the easiest way to get a hold of somebody that doesn't want to be found.
How long does a property manager or landlord have to hold on to that security deposit if they can't find the person, like legally? How long do they before they can say, okay, it's now mine?
I mean, technically in New York State, you have, is it 15 days, 14 days now to return a security deposit?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. So after 2 weeks, if you can't find that person, I guess technically it should go to Office of Unclaimed Funds. I've never had to go through that process,
That makes
thankfully.
sense, yeah.
I guess it would probably go to Office of Unclaimed Funds would be my first thought.
That would be the best way to do it.
The best way to do
yeah,
it, yeah.
Don't hold on to it, right?
I mean, I don't want it in my escrow account.
Right.
Like, if it's not my money, I don't want it in my escrow account.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
as
what,
far
yeah,
as,
what you don't want is the state to come back to you and be like, you held on to this for 2 months.
Exactly.
This guy said he did get. They're always going to take the favor of the
Right,
of the tenant
exactly.
in that case. So you're absolutely. I think that's the best way to go. Is just get it out of your
get
account.
it out of your account.
And say,
Well,
listen, I don't even have the money. I got rid of it.
Exactly. So there's a couple tricks you can use to try to find a tenant that doesn't, or an ex-tenant that doesn't want to be found. There's sending a letter to the previous address and seeing if they've done mail forwarding.
Forwarding, yeah.
Most people don't do mail forwarding, is what I found. For whatever reason, like.
What about contacting one of the references on their application? Say, hey, I got their money here. I don't know they
That
have an
was
address.
that was the other thing I was
Can
going to
you have
mention
them
is if
call
you
me?
have an emergency contact or
Yeah.
something like that. You used to work in collections.
I
didn't you?
did.
I was going to say that's an old collections
Oh,
trick.
man, that was the best time of my life.
Yeah, that was an old collections trick. I remember that. We used to. I have a short term that I did in collections, and we would. I would think neighbors is who we used to call and ask them to stick a note on the door or something. Oh man, I hated that time in my life.
Yeah,
Collections was a brutal industry.
Man, those were my glory days.
Yeah, right. A couple other things that you can do to try to find somebody that doesn't want to be found. They're liable to update their address on things like. I mean, if Blockbuster, when Blockbuster used to be a thing, you could find people using Blockbuster. There will be places that people will update their addresses, though.
Sure.
Things similar, or like if they have, as dumb as it sounds, if you have a pizza box in one of your trashes that belong to that tenant, you might be able to say, okay, well, this tenant eats at this pizza place. They probably didn't move that far away.
Yeah.
Track them back that way. Realistically speaking, I would just wait 30, 60 days and try to skip trace them down, because more often than not, by that point, they've put a utility or a credit card in their name, and it's found its way back into the databases.
Perfect. Sharon wants to know, how do landlords stay abreast of tenants' illegal activity that has been responded to by the PD? Must we watch the news for charges, or can landlords call and ask someone? I don't know if Sharon wants to know, like, while they're in the apartment already, and maybe they're in 3 to 6 months, and all of a sudden they're getting arrested.
Now all of a sudden there's stuff happening.
How do you do? Again, that goes towards the background check is just a moment in time.
Right,
Snapshot.
it's exactly right. It's a snapshot, and like so, even if they're 6 months in, chances are nothing would show on their background anyway, because you have to get all the way through the court and everything else, which is we're still playing catch up here in New York. So,
I don't know if there's anything you could do preemptive, but what about while it's happening in the moment? Are there things that can be put in a lease if you're convicted of a crime? You're a breach of contract or anything like that? Can you even do something like that?
I'm not even sure if you could do something like that. I would have to do a little research on, because you got to figure that sometimes once you become a convicted felon, there are some protected class type things, and depending on what you're convicted of, and blah blah blah.
How do you feel about rescreening after a year?
I don't
Actually, just criminal, maybe.
I think you and I talked about that a couple months ago, just in passing, because I don't rescreen. Once I have a tenant that's in place, for the most part, I don't rescreen.
We did a little article. We do a newsletter for our enterprise clients, and we threw an article in there about that. And there's you could go about it two different ways. One way you can say, I'm not going to reapply for a job. But in that same sense, property managers in large communities like that, also part of their responsibility, is to keep the community
overall
safe.
community safety. Yeah.
And if every time you apply, if you're a new tenant, and you're saying, wait, every single year we have to apply for, well, now everybody on the property does. So you're not asking them for their financials or anything like that.
Yeah,
We're
just a
doing
re-verification
just a
of criminal.
That's all we want to know.
Yeah.
Things like that, just something to consider.
It is. It's something to consider. I guess that's probably the value of that's gonna depend on the value of the quality of the data in the state or municipality that you're operating in too.
Yeah. No.
So that's a big thing too, with the quality of the data.
Absolutely.
But as far as I found that police departments, as a property manager, in the city of Buffalo, if I know as a fact that there was a crime that was committed at our property, the police were out, blah 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 blah, I can't even walk in and get a copy of the police report.
Wow.
It's like pulling teeth. Like, I've had to use my attorney to get copies of police reports in the past because they just, I'm not on the deed.
Right.
I could show them the property management agreement and power of attorney showing them I have the full force and authority of the owner, but, like, they just don't care at the end of the day.
Yeah.
If you're not named on the report and you're not the named property owner, they don't want to talk to you.
Sure.
So you might have more luck as a property owner going in and getting a copy of a police report, but realistically speaking, I've had very, very little success in that regard. And again, this is probably going to be one of those things that's municipality by municipality. If you live in small town America where you know all the police officers,
that's one
they're
thing.
probably going to talk to you. But if you live in New York City where there's, I don't know, 3,000 sworn officers on duty at any given time, probably not going to get as much of as many results that way.
Sure. All right, Janine. Janine wants to know, should tenants be responsible for the upkeeping of the landscape shrubbery, including maintenance of small bushes, vines, weeds growing in and or on the house?
What's your lease say? That's the only
Janine.
answer to that question. What does your lease say?
What does your lease say?
Yeah, landscaping is one of those things that is strictly decided in the lease. It's there's not a law thing that says, other than the lawn has to be cut, I guess would be a building code violation.
Do you, being a property manager for what you do here, do your owners dictate, how they want that done? Do they have that choice, or is that something that your company does?
Most of our owners are fine with what we do, which is cut every other week. And I think we're going to change that next year because we had last couple of years we've been having, it's always wet at the beginning of the season, so you need to cut weekly. And then like now, I could have gone 3 weeks without cutting my lawn. So we got to adjust our scheduling a little bit on that. But we typically will cut every other week.
So you'll
during the summer
include
months.
that as the service to the tenant.
We build it into the cost of the rent, and then the property owner pays for it as part of their monthly services essentially.
Gotcha.
So and it works out pretty well that way.
So it comes down to, what does your lease say?
What's your lease say? And if you're thinking about adding this to your lease, you should make sure that you specify lawn and then landscaping separately, because there's a big difference between somebody getting the lawnmower or the weed whacker out and somebody cutting hedges and stuff like that. So there's a little bit of a difference there. We have one property owner that he wants us to make sure that we take care of the hedgerows and make sure everything's mulched out, but he wants the tenants to handle just the lawn maintenance and stuff like that. So you can really kind of specify down to the nitty gritty depending on what you want. It's really just a matter of what makes sense for you and what makes sense for the property.
Gotcha. Sherry wants to know, utilities are the tenant's responsibility. Too often I receive overdue notices from the utility company in the mail and occasionally a disconnect notice. Lately, it's as if they're on a pay every month basis. Should the landlord follow up with the tenant, or should the notices be filed as information only?
So it depends on the municipality. Everything is so dependent. There's no location on that one, right?
No.
Okay. So in the city of Buffalo, if you have a water bill that goes unpaid, that turns into a lien against your property and you can be foreclosed on for it.
Wow.
But gas and electric are run by private utility companies, and the account is owned by the tenant. So even if the tenant runs up a $12,000 electric bill,
it goes on the
tenant's name, not on the property. And there's no way for those utilities to lien your personal or your property for the debt of a tenant, essentially.
Gotcha.
So it depends on if the utility is municipal or if the utility is private. If it's municipal and they can put a lien on it, I would make sure that those utilities are paid no matter what.
Okay.
And that's actually the reason, so like water, like I had just mentioned, becomes lienable.
Right.
All of the water bills get handled by either the property owner or by our office.
Typically, I've never not seen it in our area of where the water's included.
So we have some single families that water, we bill it to the tenant essentially. Like we get the bill from town of Amherst and then we put it on the tenant's ledger and they pay it the following month.
Okay.
That's typically what we do. We don't want it in the tenant's name ever because, again, if it goes unpaid and becomes a lien against the property, we don't want one of our owners falling into foreclosure over something as simple as that.
Right,
so
right.
That's it's one of those things. Would I ask a tenant why their utility's not getting paid? Maybe if it was something that was lienable against the property, but if it was like what it is here with National Grid and National Fuel, I'm not going to find out until the account gets disconnected and it reverts back to the landlord's name or to our company's name as part of the Leave On for Landlord program that we're signed up for.
All right, so that makes sense. Daryl, and I got a funny feeling I know the answer to this one right away. Tenant has snakes in the house. Who's responsible for removal and why? Does it say what your lease is? In that in your lease?
I would say yeah. Man, this is a tough one too because there's no location listed.
Right.
In New York State, the landlord has an onus to handle pest control.
Okay.
In other states, that's not the case. Is this a snake that came in from outside, or is this a pet snake though? Because it almost sounds like this is a pet snake that's gone awry.
Well, no, tenant has snakes in the house. Who is responsible for removal and why? Yeah, I mean, I don't, I don't know if Daryl's thinking like, I don't want no snakes in the house. And I need to get rid of this. And should I remove it or?
Yeah, right.
I think it's more. There's an outside snake that's.
That's
coming
kind of what
in.
it sounds like. Probably like a gardener snake or something like
Yeah.
that. I would think that that's probably going to fall on the landlord if it's not specified in the lease directly.
Gotcha.
I know in the state of New York it would fall on the landlord, but that's one that you're probably going to have to check your local laws and legislation to see what the rule is there.
Gotcha. This one's from Anonymous.
Okay.
Hope it's not the Anonymous with
The
the
mask,
mask on. I don't know. We'll see. We're going to answer the question anyways, right? What do I include in a basement rental contract? What is allowed and not allowed? I've never seen this one. A basement
Rental contract.
Almost like, are they allowing them just to use the basement?
Is it like a storage or is it
Right.
like a living?
I'm thinking storage.
I mean, if it's just storage, so all right. If it's storage and it's in a basement, I see that Josh just posted in the chat there. Who's responsible for pet control? A link off of those
Nice.
RentPrep sites, so
Thanks,
that'll help.
Josh.
Thank you, Josh. I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. What was the
No,
question?
that's fine. Basement rental contract.
Basement rental contract.
What's allowed? What's not allowed? If you're using it just for, let's
If
go
it's
with
just for
storage.
storage,
Yeah.
so here in Western New York, we have basements and they're old. I mean,
Right.
most of the housing stock here in Western New York, especially when you get into like City of Buffalo and stuff like that, is late 1800s, early 1900s build. It's stacked stone foundations. They all seep water.
Yep.
You know, it's kind of a fact of life. We just deal with it here.
Sure.
So in our lease, it specifies that we do not guarantee dry basements, because you also have to factor in the fact that all of the plumbing runs along the basement ceiling, and a lot of the like sewage lines and stuff run under the basement floors.
Okay.
There's a lot of opportunity for moisture to find its way into the basement, whether
Sure.
it be broken pipe, backed up sewer line, seepage through the outside walls. So we simply put, do not guarantee a dry basement.
Okay.
We also don't guarantee that anything that anyone stores in a basement won't get damaged or destroyed.
Okay.
So it's basically an at-risk way for you to store your stuff.
Gotcha.
That being said, if I was renting a basement out to somebody for storage, and I'm assuming that they would be expecting it to be dry and not, turn into a giant disaster. So as far as what's allowed, what's not allowed, you're gonna have to talk to your municipality on that. I can tell you that if it's a living, uh-oh, I hope we're still alive.
We should be good.
We should be good. If it's a basement living contract, that's a totally different set of circumstances.
Gotcha.
At that point, you need like 2 forms of egress. You're going to have full compliance for smoke and CO detectors. Basically, if you're going to do a basement level apartment and you're not planning on doing it with the full blessing of the municipality and making sure that it's all done to code and you have a certificate of occupancy and all that, we talked about this on one of the podcast episodes, and I would encourage people to go back and find that episode and give it a listen. But like, essentially, you're taking such a massive risk to put a basement level living space in without doing it the right way.
Right.
You're taking people's lives into your hand to do something like that.
You are.
Like if somebody can't get out of a basement because
That's it.
the one egress that they have is blocked,
Yeah.
or if something happens structurally above them and things come down,
Yeah.
it's a nasty situation. I don't like basement apartments. I don't like them at all, to be honest with you. But if you're going to do a basement or a garden level apartment, just make sure that you're doing it the right way. Make sure that you have a certificate of occupancy. Don't cut corners and just stick somebody in the basement for an extra $500 a month. You're going to regret it.
Yeah. Karen wants to know, can you share standard billing practices for property management? And she put a la carte or multiple property discounts.
I can't really, to be honest with you, because every property management company bills differently. You'll find different property managers bill differently in the same market. For instance, I know that the way I bill is a percentage-based model,
Okay.
percentage of rents collected, and then we have some markups on maintenance and things like that. Other property management companies that are out there do like a flat fee per month per door.
Sure.
It really just depends on
Just the structure of the
just the
business.
structure of the business. Yeah, and some have like a hybrid model. As a matter of fact, there's a gentleman out in California that has spoken at several property management conferences. And he runs a hybrid model where it's a flat rate of X number of dollars per month and then a percentage above and beyond that.
Okay.
And that works very, very well for him because when the place is vacant, he still collects his flat rate, but not the percentage.
Okay.
And then when the place is occupied, he gets his percentage on top of that. So
Okay.
it works out well for
Yeah,
him.
get creative like
Yeah.
that. Elliot wants to know. Elliot's from Brooklyn, New York. I'm assuming. Well, I shouldn't assume that. The tenant. So I have a tenant in Brooklyn, New York, who stopped paying rent in May.
Mm-hmm.
She is just trying to rip me off and get free rent. How can I get her out of my building quickly, and how can I get my money back? Well, get your money back.
That's the tough one.
That's going to be the tough one.
Yeah.
I don't know about that one. But I mean, you got to go through.
You got to
the
start the
process.
eviction process. So
Yeah.
here in the state of New York, that starts with a 5-day notice to pay rent, and then there's a 14-day notice that goes out alongside that. If you're in the state of New York and you're trying to do an eviction right now and you're trying to do it yourself, you are basically white knuckling the entire experience.
Yeah.
Like, it seems that most eviction attorneys don't want to be doing evictions right now because the process is such a mess. So to be doing it as an individual right now, a single, like a homeowner trying to do an eviction, I wouldn't recommend it. I would strongly say you need to get an attorney involved as early in the process as possible. Even as soon as like scheduling and serving the notices. Because if the notices are served out of order, if they're served in the wrong way, if they're served at the wrong time, if they're served in the wrong manner to the wrong person, you basically start the whole process over. And you're not going to know that until after those notices have already expired. So you're just burning days and days and days.
It almost feels like you're just going in circles.
It really is, yeah.
Ugh, what a
My
mess.
recommendation, look, it's going to suck, but I would bite the bullet and try a cash for keys first, just to reclaim the asset and get the bad tenant out of there.
Right.
And if the tenant doesn't do the cash for keys, I would probably do the cash for keys right alongside the eviction.
So what do you think in a situation like this? What would you do? In our area, for cash for keys.
Usually, what we'll do is offer them starting somewhere probably in the $500 plus their deposit back range.
So you would tell this, listen, if you leave on this date, we'll give you $500 plus your deposit back.
Right.
As long as
You
don't
have to
destroy the
leave.
place.
You have to leave on this date. It needs to be broom clean.
Okay.
We're going to walk through it to make sure that you've removed all of your stuff and everything, and that it is broom clean. We're going to deduct on site for anything that's not taken care of, or if you leave the place full of garbage or whatever, and I'll hand you cash the day that I come to do your move out.
Okay.
That seems to work the best.
Yeah.
I'm not just going to show up with a pile of cash and say, okay, let's go, and try to do it right then. Like, we have a form that they sign off on, releasing the apartment back to us. It's basically a bilateral release from each other, basically saying neither one of us want anything to do with each other anymore. Right. We're done.
Washing your hands, I got you. Cool.
And that seems to work well.
Yeah,
I shouldn't say that works well. It's an option.
It's an option.
Yeah, it's an option.
And if they do bite,
right?
It's obviously you're going to save not only time, but you're
right.
going to save some money also.
Absolutely.
When it comes to the eviction.
Well, and I think the amount that you're going to offer is going to depend on your market and how badly you want them out and how long it's going to take to get them out. Like,
right.
So here in Western New York, we're still seeing like 2 to 3 month eviction processes. California, again, it's probably closer to a year. How many months of lost rent, plus attorney's fees, plus, you can afford, if you will, to offer a much larger cash for keys in a scenario like that versus a scenario where okay, this tenant's only going to be a thorn in my side for a couple of months and then they're gone, or whatever the case may be.
Gotcha. All right. Well, yeah. In this case, Elliot, I mean, they've already gone almost 3 months without paying rent. If you haven't started the eviction process, you may really want to consider that cash for keys option. And at that point,
Elliot actually popped into the chat here.
I
Offered her cash for keys and she refused. She wants to stay for as long as possible. Her lease expires in October 22. Honestly, I would just start the eviction at this point. You're already in August. You've got September and October. I would start.
I mean, if the lease is up in October, which is
October of 22. Elliot, is this the first year of her lease? I'm assuming it is. We'll wait for his response to come in. While I'm waiting for your response to come in, I'll tell you, I would recommend getting the attorney started now on the non-payment eviction. I would also issue the notice for the non-renewal as well at the same time. That way you have 2 separate cases, if you will, attempting to get this tenant out at the end of their lease term. I would do both. I would do the cash for keys, or I'm sorry, the non-payment eviction, start the non-payment eviction, get that ball rolling, and then I would also get the ball rolling on the the non-renewal, the holdover is what they call it in New York State. And you did say that it's a 2-year lease, and she's 18 months into it, and she stopped paying 18 months in. So with it being a 2-year lease, you do have to give a 60-day notice on the non-renewal. So you're going to want to keep that in mind, which means that if you want her out at the end of October, you basically need to get on that in the next few days here. That needs to be issued prior to September 1 in order to go into effect September 1 for end of lease at the end of October.
Yeah, so now you're looking at the end of October.
Yeah, so I would go both routes on this. I would start the non-payment eviction or continue the non-payment eviction because it says that you have started it. And at the same time, I would also issue that notice that you are not renewing her lease, that you have no intent of renewing her lease. You're making it very, very clear when you do finally find your way into a courtroom, you do not want this tenant to remain in the property. And hopefully the judge sees that, understands that, and grants you what you're looking to have done. Mm-hmm. So perfect. Good luck, man. It's going to be an uphill battle, that's for sure.
Yeah. I hope that answers your question, Elliot. If not, keep throwing some knowledge in there. We'll get to it. Mm-hmm. Gasper wants to know, how much does it cost now for a comprehensive background check, and exactly what does RentPrep check on a comprehensive background check?
So I should be asking you that question. I
guess.
Yeah.
I mean, so when you log into the RentPrep site, you're gonna have two options. You're gonna have a basic package, and you're gonna have a smart move package. When you say comprehensive background check, everybody has a different idea of what that is. Mm-hmm. We have pre-built our basic, and then you have the option to add on beyond that. Our basic package starts at $21. With that, the very first step our screeners do is they're going to authenticate the identity of the individual. They're going to make sure that the information that you're providing coincides with what we're looking at, and then from there we're going to start running different searches. Mm-hmm. We also include at that point a nationwide eviction search. We're going to do bankruptcy search. We're going to do the judgments and liens search. From there, if you want to add on and you want to look at criminal, sex offender, and things like that, there are going to be add-on options that will be available to you. So it just depends on how much you actually want to get. If you want to go the smart move route, which is going to be a full credit report, you'll get a residence score with that. That starts at $38. There's also add-ons included. That is, that's a solid report. That's going to give you a lot of information. At that point, you're looking at your your credit report with your residence score. We verify, obviously, the social security number, authenticate the individual. You'll get the nationwide criminal with that. That includes a sex offender. You're also included is bankruptcies are going to be on that, and then evictions. When it comes to add-ons, you can add on the judgments and lien search because judgments and liens no longer appear on credit reports. And then also we offer the income verification, which is a really nice product too. Mm-hmm. That's an extra like $10, but the income verification, in my opinion, I think it's one of the best searches that anybody can do. I preach it to all of our enterprise clients. This is something you need to consider. It gives you a really good idea of the individual's financial state, their current state, and what they've been doing up to the last 12 months, depending on how much information the bank is willing to give us. But again, you can't predict what's going to happen 6 months from now if somebody loses their job. But what you can see is whether or not, if that situation does happen, do they have a cushion prior?
Right.
If they got that $20,000 in the bank, something happens, okay. But if they got $200,
right.
They probably got some help from mom or dad or somebody to help with the security deposit. You might want to put parameters in place. Income. You need at least this amount. Available cash flow and so on and so forth. So, for $10, you can't beat that. You really can't.
And the thing that we preach is constantly. We talk about it on the podcast all the time. Is have a set of fair housing compliant screening criteria.
Sure.
Stick to them. Use them every single time.
Yeah.
If you stick to your criteria, if you don't make changes to your criteria midstream, and your criteria was compliant to begin with,
right,
you literally have protected yourself from all fair housing.
Absolutely.
And the leasing. If you're going to have a fair housing violation, you're probably, and this is just me talking off the top of my head, you're probably 80% more likely to encounter a fair housing issue during the screening process than at any other time during the entire tenancy.
Yep. Absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit about, and I know this is not one of the questions that's on there, can you talk a little bit about availability of data in different areas? Because like you mentioned evictions,
sure.
And I know that back in 2019 when HSTPA went into effect here in New York, one of my first phone calls was, I don't know if it was to you or to Steve, probably to Steve, and I said to him, hey, what are we doing about this? Because I can't look at eviction data anymore, and that's part of our reporting. So I know we had to make some changes on our end.
Yeah, I mean, again, legislation changes very quickly. Every state has their own laws in place. That's one of the advantages, to utilizing RentPrep services. We have a full compliance department. We're not just an AI company that's extracting data from databases, putting it in a report, and saying, "Here you go, good luck."
I wish we could turn the webcam, and like the screening room is actually right outside the conference room that we're filming in today. Like there's several screeners on the floor here, all checking reports live as they come through, which is not something that a lot of people understand about RentPrep.
That's what really separates RentPrep from right now what's on the market is that human element. We have individuals that are FCRA certified. They go through a 90-day training cycle right out the gates, and then from there it's continuous training up to almost 2 years. This is a career for these individuals. They're not, just here part-time for the summer trying to make ends meet before they go back to school. This is their career. This is what they do. And the nice thing about that is when you have somebody that's in that type of seat that wants to be here, that this is what they want to do, it's going to come out in the quality of work. But also, if you ever have a question about anything, you can call in.
Right.
And they're going to answer the phone, and they're going to walk you through whatever you're looking at on that report and give you a little bit more insight, explain it to you, especially for the new landlords.
Right.
Just getting started, these reports, again, this data changes from time to time, and you may see something, it's not familiar to you. So that customer service is there, which is nice. But when it comes to, different states and municipalities and how that works, it just comes down to, who's actually compiling these reports? Do you have, an algorithm set in place just to see, what you can and can't see? Or do you have somebody that's, educated on the laws and has then, again, another layer of protection in that compliance department there, making sure that if something does change, not only are we notifying our screeners on this and making sure that they understand what they can and cannot report, but we also have the ability to educate our clients and let them know, like, if you are in the state of New York when that happens, we put a banner out to all of our New York clients. Listen, starting this day, you can no longer see evictions.
Right.
Do we have a go around? No, we don't dabble in the gray area, but we make suggestions on other types of searches that may help you out with something like that. So again, it's a very fluid industry, and unless you
Things are changing all the time.
Unless you have something, that again, the human element there, you can't change with the industry then if you're just, again, just AI.
No, you're exactly right. What I was going to say, just because the company that you're getting your screening data from is a large company doesn't mean that it's good, because I know that Appfolio, the company that we use for our property management software, they either lost or settled a very, very large lawsuit last year.
Yeah, so about a year and a half ago.
It basically all boiled down to they were not using a human solution. They were using a completely automated solution.
Yep.
And the automated solution was reporting data that should never have been reported.
And
sometimes not even the correct person.
Right.
And there was a lot of lawsuits about that. I think that was a class action lawsuit.
4.2. 4.2 million they lost.
Yeah. So just because you are working with a large company to do something doesn't necessarily mean that they're all right all the time either. You really have to. If you're going to be engaged in the rental industry, in the real estate industry, you really do have to have some focus on what's going on in the world around you.
Sure.
Like, a big portion of my job is, I do day-to-day property management, but I also have to look at big picture of what's changing legislatively, not just here in New York, not just here in Buffalo, but countrywide, really.
Exactly.
Because what happens in Seattle and Los Angeles and San Francisco, it finds its way east eventually. It seems like, especially like the West Coast, like Seattle and Los Angeles, California, the stuff that happens on the West Coast seems to find its way to New York very, very quickly, and then it slowly kind of filters out through the rest of the country.
It definitely does.
It's definitely something to keep in mind.
And again, if you're not savvy on that, or you're not up to date on that, at least go with a screening company that is. You look into that. Compare what you're using to what you could have, and even if turnaround time's a little bit different, it's not instantaneous. I tell all my enterprise clients that I speak with is, the faster you get a report, the more likely of inaccuracy. Because again, that's just the number one indicator that it's just some computer grabbing information, just giving it to you.
Yeah.
It's a common name. There's a lot of common names, believe it, and I didn't realize this until I started working. There's a lot of common names with the same date of birth. It's crazy. So, they're only using certain points of authentication, and they're giving you something. The worst thing is to accuse somebody of being a sex offender or something like that, and they're not.
So when I lived in Niagara County, there's another Andrew Schultz that lives in Niagara County, and
Okay.
he and we both had bank accounts at the same credit union.
Oh, man.
And more than once, I went into the credit union, and eventually they stopped doing it because they took our licenses and scanned them so that
Right.
it would pop up on the screen with our picture when we walked in.
Who's better looking?
I was, of
Okay,
course.
good.
But there was more than one time when they would pull the wrong account up.
Sure.
Yeah, so
It's an issue.
It is an issue.
Yeah.
And it's for there to be Schultz is not exactly a common last name.
Mhm.
For there to be two of us in Niagara County,
Right.
which is not a terribly populous county,
Right. Yeah.
crazy.
So again, just be mindful of how you're getting this information
Mhm.
and make sure that the place you are getting it from, excuse me, is reputable.
Mm-hmm.
Kathy wants to know.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Can a landlord require the exiting tenant have the home as clean as when they came?
Mm-hmm.
What about clean carpets, oven, bathrooms, cobwebs? You mentioned broom clean. What does that mean? So we tell tenants that we want the carpets cleaned by a truck-mounted steam cleaner, and we want them to give us the receipt from that because we want the carpets to be steam cleaned. We don't want a rug doctor that's going to leave a bunch of shampoo and stuff in the carpets. They never draw everything back out
Gotcha.
well. So we want an actual professional coming in with a truck-mounted steam cleaner to do carpets, and we require the tenants to give us a receipt of that. As far as cleaning the house itself goes, as long as the tenant does a good job of cleaning the property, we don't require professional cleaning or anything like that. We do ask for inside and outside of appliances, inside and outside of cabinets. We go for more of a broom clean. I want okay, what does broom clean mean? Broom clean would be what you would expect to see when somebody moves out, a place that you're probably going to have to go in and maybe do some paint touch-ups, and you might have to send a cleaner through to wipe down the toilet and clean the appliance, something like that.
Okay.
Not spotless. So
Right.
I use the terms broom clean and hotel clean.
Okay.
When I'm referring to hotel clean, I'm referring to what you would expect to see when you walk into a hotel. I never expect that a tenant's going to give me an apartment back that looks like it's move-in ready.
Gotcha.
It's just wear and tear exists and things of that nature. You're never going to get an apartment back that's in pristine condition unless the tenant never lived in the apartment.
Right.
So we always look for that broom clean, and then when we give the apartment back out, when we try to turf it out in hotel clean.
Gotcha. All right, Kathy, does that answer your question? If you're still on, give us a thumbs up.
Oop.
Oh no. Okay, we're good.
We're back.
All right. Let's see what we got here. So let's hit some Facebook questions. So we have the Facebook group, obviously.
Yep.
And we like to pull questions that have a lot of traffic, a lot of different comments, and we like to try to jump into that conversation. So I'm not sure though if this is a tenant or not, but this individual says, "Who should I ask to fix this water damage in the ceiling?" And then they put general contractor with a question mark.
I wish I had a picture.
Yeah. So obviously, you want a professional going in there either way.
Well, let's talk in generalities. We'll play it like we don't have a picture because we don't.
Right.
You've got water damage on your ceiling. It must have come from somewhere. So
Right.
I guess the first thing to do is get rid of the root cause of wherever the moisture came from.
Right.
If you have a roof leak, deal with your roof leak. If you have a pipe that's leaking, deal with the pipe that's leaking.
Mm-hmm.
In Western New York, especially during the winter, we'll get ice damming, which can cause some interior leaks and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the source of the leak is, eliminate the source of the leak first, whether
Right.
you need a roofer or a plumber or a general contractor or whatever,
Okay.
and then deal with whatever your roof or your ceiling issue is. If you need to cut out a piece of drywall and replace it, more than likely a handyman can do something like that.
Gotcha.
But if it's doing an entire ceiling, you might want to bring in an experienced drywall crew that knows how to
Sure.
do something like that.
And I mean, if you're the landlord, are you documenting all this and then taking out a security deposit, or only if it has to do with damage from the tenant? So
If it's, I mean, short of having a pot of boiling sauce explode or something, I don't know
that's
how
just
damage.
something
It's probably something that's going to
upkeep
be
of the property.
landlord. It sounds like a wear and tear or something that was a corrective maintenance issue not caused by the tenant at all. So it
Gotcha.
doesn't sound like this would be a tenant responsible issue.
Cool. April in the group wanted to know. She said, "Hello, I've decided to take over my own property management, and now I'm wondering which app would be best for rent collection. I only have 2 units, so it's not that labor intensive, but the property is about 45-minute drive away, and I would like to have an app that has good record keeping. Any suggestions? The previous manager used to use Cozy.
So Cozy's all right. I've never used it.
Mhm.
Cozy was purchased by Apartments.com
Yeah.
last year, I
I
think.
think it was last
I
year.
think it was last year.
Yeah.
I don't know if Cozy is currently accepting new clients on that platform right now. I think that they were planning on doing some sort of a major overhaul on the platform and then re-releasing it under the Apartments.com banner.
Gotcha.
But I don't know when or if that ever actually took place.
Mm-hmm.
There's a ton of softwares out there.
Sure.
The problem is any software that you're buying is it's more than likely going to be a monthly service.
Mm-hmm.
And all of them are going to be way more than you're going to want to pay for simply managing 2 units.
Sure.
So for a situation like that, I guess I would say,
What would be the best way to collect rent if it's 45 minutes away? She doesn't want to drive, 45 minutes every single month.
let's see. So actually, Josh, I think you're still paying attention. If you're paying attention, add to the content list. I want to do a video comparing Venmo, PayPal. What else is out there? Venmo, PayPal, Zelle. Because I want to really get into the terms and conditions and see what they do and don't allow and what the
Right.
chargeback policies are on these softwares and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Without having that knowledge, I don't want to say, oh yeah, use Zelle or whatever, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I will tell you is if you're using PayPal, um, don't do it using it as friends and family, because if they find you using it for like rent transactions, business transactions, and
Mm-hmm.
you're using it as friends and family,
Right.
they'll lock your account with all of the money in it.
Oh man.
I know somebody that had a PayPal account with like 5 figures in it, locked for 6 months. And of course, PayPal has no customer support or anything that you can actually. There we go. Josh just popped a rent payments
He's
app into
amazing.
the. He really is.
And nobody knows what Josh looks like. I always
Right?
try to get him in here.
He doesn't. He's actually just. He's an AI.
He's the AI.
He's the AI. That's the problem.
That's why it's so quick.
So, but
All
yeah,
right.
I think that we're eventually going to do probably a short video on the different apps
Yeah,
and stuff
I think
like
that.
that.
Would work. That'd be awesome.
But as far as like actual property management softwares, you're not going to want to spend the money on one for just 2 units. But some popular names: Appfolio, Buildium, Cozy, which is Apartments.com, Rent Manager. There's a ton of them out there. If you
Yeah.
search for rental management software,
Yeah.
and that's just long-term stuff. If you're doing short-term, there's a whole different category of softwares out
Wow.
there. Yeah.
Interesting. Kathy also wanted to know. She said that she she asking, is there a problem with having it deposited in my Zelle account? So I guess, Kathy, we should wait for Andrew to do his podcast on those.
Yeah, as far as there being no grace period, that I can actually shed a little bit of light on. That's going to be a state law thing. So here in the state of New York, we have to offer a 5-day grace period now by law. That was one of the changes from HSTPA back in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
So check your state law to find out on the grace period thing. Is there any problem with having it deposited to my account on Zelle? You'll have to wait for the next video on that one, I guess.
Yeah,
But that's
stay tuned
definitely
for that.
something that's been on my list for a while now, because that's a very frequent question that we see in the RentPrep group.
Sure,
So
sure.
I will be doing some research
Perfect.
on that one.
Yeah, that'll work. Just keep a lookout for that.
Mhm.
Maxine want to know who's had good success renting to college students with parents co-signing. Do it or no? I have an enterprise client in Georgia right now. She's right outside the university. She's got 76 units, and she rents pretty much only
Strictly
to
students, yeah.
and she's had really good success. It comes down to, I asked her that. I said, how does this work? I know a lot of property managers have asked, or are skeptical on it because the college student doesn't have any credit or anything like that. She says it comes down to communication with them right out the gates.
Yeah.
That and she reports to credit
Oh, nice.
to help them establish their credit. She doesn't do it, to be malicious. She's doing it to try to help the individual out, get them going while they're in college,
Makes sense.
and kind of makes them aware of that. Listen, this is an opportunity for you. Don't screw it up, type of deal. Almost like another parent there. At the moment.
So is she taking cosigners? Is she using the
She
parents
does.
as cosigners?
She does
Okay.
in certain situations. But again, she runs the income verification.
Mhm.
So
That's actually what I was just thinking.
if
The
the
income
college-
verification would be super useful
Yeah,
there.
the college does, or the college student does have a job, or they can show that they have an established account, and she has her parameters. She try to keep the cosigner off of there to help them establish more credit.
Yeah.
But in certain situations, obviously, she needs it. But she's only renting out through the semester. She's very slow during the summertime, obviously. So I really don't see her running reports, from May until July, and then once the end of July, August 1st hits, boom.
Boom,
I
yeah.
mean, it's been cranking.
Cranking.
Because
That's
everybody
how
wants
it
to get in.
was. Yeah, that's how it was for us too. We used to manage a bunch of probably about 40 doors down by UB South Campus.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing. We would have we did all of them with cosigners. So for whatever reason, we basically got exchange students from India
Okay.
and girls from Long Island.
Mm-hmm.
Those were the two classes of tenant that we had in those houses for whatever reason. They always seemed to be. And
How was that?
It was fine. Like
Yeah.
so with the Indian students, there wasn't really much to screen. So
Sure.
and this was back before HSTPA, so we could do like first, last, and security.
Right.
That was pretty much what we had to do because there wasn't really much more you could do I mean, the guy just got off of an airplane 12 hours ago. He hasn't
Right.
established anything here.
Sure.
Lucky they have a cell phone at that point.
Exactly.
With the students from Long Island, what we would do is we would generally get a cosigner from their parent. And then if they didn't have that cosigner available, usually it was first, last, and security.
Gotcha.
But obviously now we can't even do first, last, security. Now it's just security.
And then when you were doing that, were you doing your leases by just semester?
We were doing the
Or were you
leases
doing-
as 12-monthers.
Oh,
believe it or
really?
not. Yeah. That was how that particular client wanted it, was 12-month leases.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the one in Georgia I'm speaking of. She only does it by semester,
Yeah.
which is great,
Mhm.
because I mean, again, if they stop paying, you're really not losing too much, and they're 9 times out of 10 gonna leave anyways.
I think that you're exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if they're going to leave, they'll sign a
Just gonna go
1-year
back
lease
home.
and they'll just leave. They'll go
Yeah.
back home. We used to
Yeah.
have that happen a lot of times with our international students.
Yeah.
A lot of times, believe it or not, though, the international students, especially like the Indian students around UB, they had like a Facebook group that they all communicated in before they came over, so they already knew who the good landlords, the bad landlords were before they ever got here.
Sure.
And they also use it to sublet rooms and to replace people and stuff. So honestly, they took care of most of their own subletting
Yeah.
without us having to really step in, other than to jostle some paperwork
That's
around.
cool
It worked out pretty well that way.
So yeah, I mean, there you go. There's your. I mean, I've only talked to somebody that has really good luck with it.
Mhm.
Sounds like you had some good luck
We
with
had
it.
some good luck.
Just comes down to communication.
The one thing I would caution is if you're going to do student rentals, you're going to be dealing with students who, while they're technically adults, they don't present as adults most of the time.
Sure.
So a lot of times you're going to get phone calls from the parents, and if the parent's not a cosigner, sorry, you're not on the lease. I can't
Right.
talk to you. Your adult child needs to call me and deal with this situation. Just keeping the boundaries is important, because and all it takes is one time. Like all it takes is you accidentally talk to a parent thinking that they were on the lease as a cosigner.
That's it.
That's it.
That's
So
it.
yeah, just be cautious of that.
Kathy's active in the chat here.
Oh no, our screen just went black again.
Here we go. Okay, so
Um,
Kathy said that you said you have a no pets policy with ESA that trumps a policy, and then you have already eliminated anyone else with a pet. What is your take on that, and how are you enforcing a no pet policy? Do you do that because pets are most always a policy?
So there's a difference between a pet, an emotional support animal, and a
Right.
service animal. I don't want to jump into all of the ins and outs of emotional support animals and service animals, because we could literally fill an entire hour on that.
I know when Steve and I were doing these months back, that was like one of the number one questions. What
We do get a lot of
about-
questions
it's
on that.
all about the pets. All about
The biggest resource I can point you towards is a site called petscreening.com. Whenever we get somebody that submits to us like an ESA letter or a service animal letter, we run it through pet screening, and then they help us to verify whether that letter is actually valid. They actually, I believe they have a database of providers that they know are just penning fake letters, so they
Sure.
can compare against that.
Okay.
They have a whole process that they go through, and it's a compliant process, which is what's most important. So
Right.
petscreening.com would be the resource that I would send somebody to for more information on that.
Gotcha.
As far as a no pets policy, ESAs and service animals don't fall under pets. They're not pets. They're no different than a CPAP or a pair of crutches.
Okay.
It's a piece of medical equipment. Durable DME, durable medical equipment is what they consider it.
Interesting.
So at that point, you would be looking for your letter from your prescribing professional, and then you're going to go through the process of vetting that letter and then vetting the animal. The one thing I will say is if it's a dog, we do require the tenant to give us a copy of the license, because pretty much every municipality here requires you to license your animal.
Okay.
So we do require, on all animals, we require rabies vaccines. On dogs, we require distemper. I don't think cats have distemper. And then the licensing. And
Gotcha.
you can require that. That's not outside of the realm of things that you're allowed to ask for when you're talking about ESAs. you can ask for those records. And if someone's not doing the bare minimums of rabies and distemper and stuff like that, they're not taking care of the animal, and it's you're going to have an issue.
Gotcha. Look at Josh again.
There we go.
Another,
Josh's got pet screening up there.
Perfect.
The other thing that I want to mention with emotional support animals and service animals is the tenant is required to take care of that animal.
Sure.
The animal can't act aggressive towards other people. It can't try to snap at little kids that are walking by. It can't be howling at all hours of the day and night. The animal has to be cared for. And if the animal's not being cared for, you do have an obligation as a landlord there to tell that tenant that the animal has to go. More, especially if you're in a multifamily, because you have the safety of other people to consider as well.
Exactly. Kathy, I hope that answers your question. Josh threw the petscreening.com in there, so go ahead, take a look, and if you have any other questions, obviously reach out to us. I got one more here because I know we're coming up on our stop time here. This question is from Debbie. Again, this was in our group. She had a question regarding the refund of a deposit. This was interesting. I've never seen this one. And I answered it. I want to hear your take on it.
Okay.
But she had asked, renters were married at the time of the rental but are now divorced. Do we send two separate checks, one to him and one to her? How do we do this? Hold on. Let me answer my question.
Okay.
Okay. So my answer to this was, what I would do is I obviously look for that forwarding address, whatever they left. And I would just write one check, but write it out to both of them.
Yeah.
And just send it and say, you guys figured it out. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not my problem. I sent the money out. That's what I would do.
That's what I would do as well.
Probably the best way,
in a circumstance like that, that's more or less what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand them a check with both of their names on it, which it's a two-party check. They both have to sign it.
They both have to sign it.
Y'all can figure it out. It's outside of the scope of my job as property manager to figure out your divorce and everything going along with it.
Exactly.
If they're amicable and they know, okay, he's getting the deposit in full, she's getting the deposit in full, if they'll sign off on paperwork stating as such, I'm fine with that.
Right.
Like, if you want me to cut the check to one person or the other person specifically, as long as you both sign off on a document stating that that's what's happening with it, I'm fine with that.
Gotcha.
I try to stay out of security deposit disputes as much as possible. Sure. I don't want anything to do with them.
Gotcha.
The other thing I would mention is when you have like resident changeover, like we'll go back to our student apartments. Let's say one student moves out, another student moves in. You have a deposit there, or at least a portion of a deposit that in theory is held by that tenant A, student A.
Okay.
Now student B is moving in. Who's responsible now? I tell student A and student B to figure out their own security deposit situation, because at the end of the lease, we're cutting 4 checks back to the 4 individuals.
Right.
So student B can pay student A or whatever, but at the end of the lease, I'm paying it out divided equally across the people who are at the top of the lease.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that pretty much that's it.
That's it.
We're at 2:00 now. When are you doing your next one? Do you know?
I don't. Sometime in the month of September, but I don't think we have a date picked out for that yet.
All right. Are you looking? You said you were looking to try to get that Zell thing down on the podcast, the Zell and all that stuff. Do you know?
I'm not sure when they'll have that out either, but I will. I'll talk to Josh and I'll talk to Ashley to see what we can do.
Where can people keep updated on stuff like that? Like if you have
on all that stuff.
Yeah.
Probably the best place to find the most of the stuff that we're doing right now is the Rent Prep for Landlords Facebook group, which is where the live stream is at. The live streams always air in the group first, and then I think they get shared out to the Rent Prep Facebook page after.
Yep.
So you don't actually see these live unless you're in the Facebook group.
Gotcha.
It's free. There's like 13,000 members in there now. We're super happy about that. It's a curated group, so it's not filled with tenants.
Right.
It's most of the people. I would like to say all of the people. Every once in a while, you might get one that slips through. But we have a group of 13,000 landlords, people that are engaged in the industry, and our engagement numbers are great. We see on average about 8,000 people per month actually active in the Facebook group, which is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
We post all of our stuff there, and then if people are looking to find me directly, you can find me at whatsdrewupto.com.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll put that. If we can have Josh maybe throw something like that in the feed, that'd be great. When do you go on tour?
Maybe 6 months to a year.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So you'll do a meet and greet, maybe do some autographs, and do some different locations. I think that'd be awesome.
I actually have been talking to Josh and Ashley about a project like that. I got to get my business to a little bit different spot so I could take some time to really travel, but we have an idea for something called the Rent Prep Roadshow.
Oh man, I think that'd be awesome.
It's pretty exciting. It's
Cool.
it's a big task. It's going to be a while before we roll something like that out.
Right, but it is in the works.
It is in the works. It's been talked about a little bit. There's been a lot more content generated lately. We do the podcast. We do have the Rent Prep for Landlords podcast. Once every 2 weeks we publish that.
Okay.
And now we're also publishing more video content as well on our YouTube page and on our Facebook page.
Great.
Tons of content out there. If you can't find the answer somewhere on RentPrep's website or in a podcast or from one of these lives, then the answer doesn't exist. Is basically what it boils down to.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah.
You want to close it out?
I opened it. You close it.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, guys, for showing up. We really appreciate everybody participating. Again, if you need any questions answered, you know how to get back in touch with us. Andrew, again, is going to be doing our AMAs on the regular, and be sure to check in on some of his podcasts. It's just full of information, like you said. If we can't answer it, pretty much nobody can.
Exactly.
All right, guys.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next month.